team effort. To kick it off, as Kelly said, I'm going to talk about the impact of the Ningaloo Research Program. And I'm going to use this as an analogy. When scientists stand in front of you and talk about impact, we sit here and rabbit on about our number of publications, how many times we've been cited, how much money we've earned, things like that. That's not how I think of impact. So for Muhammad Ali, he could throw 1,000 punches in a match. If none of them connected to his opponent, he would have been a rubbish boxer. Science is kind of the same in my view. We can spend millions of dollars on science, we can publish 1,000 papers, but unless we're connecting it to someone at the other end, unless we're having some uptake or having some application, it's not achieving its full impact. So the type of impact I'm talking about today is that real world tangible impact that we're generating from the science, and specifically related to the Ningaloo Research Program. A lot of you probably know a lot more about this than me, but in case anyone's new or haven't come across it, as Kelly said, it was a big intensive program of research commencing in 2006. It was worth around $36 million in total, so it kicked off with some initial investment from you, and then it's all in kind and everything else rolled in. It was about $36 million in total, which is a significant research program. It was designed initially to generate new knowledge before the World Heritage nomination of the area, and really designed to generate new knowledge to directly inform management. In total, there were 40 individual research projects around things like biodiversity, physical environment, the socio-economic side of things, and also to develop management support tools. And so people like Nina through led research, and it's good to have come to various presentations of this as well. So initially what we were contracted to do is, it was quite broad, evaluate the impacts of the Ningaloo Research Program, and specifically, has the knowledge that the program generated, was it good? Was it useful to inform the management of the marine park? And so that was our starting aim, and I presented this stuff about 9 months ago, the results of this study. So I'll quickly skim over it as background if people weren't there last time, and then we'll get on to the new stuff that we've been doing. So just really briefly, to understand about the new knowledge and the impacts of the original program, we essentially started interviewing people who were directly involved in the program. So starting with the Ningaloo coordinator, who was Kelly, we basically interviewed people and asked about the knowledge generated, how it's been applied, how it's been used. At the end of each interview, we said, who else should we talk to? And we started to develop a list of names. And in the end, we ended up interviewing 7 ex-mouth decision makers, so the on-ground managers, 7 Perth-based decision makers. We call Perth-based remotely based because you're remote from the reef. Caused some confusion last time I presented this. 7 chief scientists who led various research activities within the program. They're all qualitative in-depth interviews, so we could really discuss and try to get an in-depth understanding of the impacts and the science that the Ningaloo Research Program generated. And we found 3 key outcomes in this first paper, in this first work. And the first one, what? Am I pausing? All right. Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Really?
So we've been planning for some reason.
I didn't even know.
You've done an invite now? Yep. So there should be one already registered on the system. We just need to put password in. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So you don't have that. You don't have password. Yes, if you could email it to me, I'll appreciate that. Sorry.
I planned this because I hate being interviewed when I talk. So as I said, so from this first part of the study, we identified 3 key impacts, and the first was around the science of management. So every single person that we interviewed acknowledged that the program, the Ningaloo Research Program, generated an absolute bucket load of new knowledge, and that every piece of knowledge, it's kind of summed up really nicely in this second quote, that every piece of knowledge that came out of the program had this really strong inherent value that can inform the management of the marine park. So we've got this really nice new knowledge base now that we can be used to making evidence-based decisions. And particularly people spoke about those sort of 4 main categories where they felt the knowledge sort of fit into. So there's a lot of new knowledge about sectors and zoning, and as we're in the future, as we're looking at the zoning around the marine park, some of the considerations we should start making. There was a lot of new knowledge, particularly around socio-ecological modelling, things like visitor use, how to increase the tourism in the area without having impacts on the environment and so forth. There's all these new decision support tools around there that the managers of the council can use. There's also the monitoring work that's been done. There's really comprehensive baseline data now to complement what was already there, and we're starting to have more mechanisms to detect change. And knowledge about individual species, so whale sharks and turtles are the cuddly ones, things like octopus in the region, different fish, and so different things that happen, different species which are in the region. So across these sort of 4 categories, there's a lot of new knowledge. Without getting too cranky. So all of this knowledge is being communicated in a range of ways, which is really nice. So it's really common I come from the federal government and we used to contract research, and then we'll just stick like one report on the website and tick our box to say that we've done. Your department took a far more, and WAMSI took a far more active approach. So we have to, again, I used your papers, that's very coincidental. I'm not trying to suck up, but I didn't know you were coming till 10 minutes ago. So there were traditional peer-reviewed papers and things that came out of the research program. There are also the comprehensive cluster reports, most of which are available online. There's the one-page sort of nice, colourful, glossy public lay summaries which we use to communicate. And also tools like the Ningaloo Atlas, which is an online platform which many of you have probably heard of. So there are lots of active attempts to actually try and link the science out to various stakeholders, out to community members in the region. There are also workshops which were held in the region, and I think in Perth as well, and various face-to-face forums which took place as well. So that's a really big tick. So the Ningaloo Research Program generated a heap of science and management. The second big outcome is that a lot of the people we spoke to felt like the program had actually influenced, had benefits to tourism for the region. So everyone kind of knows that Ningaloo is where you go to swim with whale sharks. What people spoke about was they felt it diversified acknowledgement of what else is in the region. So around the outstanding universal values of world heritage more generally, just the region on the whole sort of opposed to just whale sharks. People also spoke about how seeing this, because it became this area of intense scientific research, international science started to get more interest in the region as well and started coming into the region. That sort of generated some international media and interest in that space. And a lot of the managers up there felt like it did increase the level of tourism in the region. So that's another positive benefit. And this is one we're going to focus on today. So all of the managers based in Exmouth, when we interviewed them, they all said that the science in the region had led to a greater trust between community members and the on-ground managers based up in Exmouth in the district. And this is important because some studies came out a while ago around the World Heritage nomination, which shows that the relationship around the World Heritage nomination between the residents of the region and your department essentially was characterised by distrust. It was a really poor relationship, and it fell apart because of the residents' perception of how the department handled the World Heritage nomination. It's more complex than that, but that's the gist of it. And so all of a sudden now we feel the managers on the ground are saying because of the science we're starting to get this impression that people are starting to trust us more. And it was very anecdotal as part of the study, and when I presented it up here, it was actually Jim Sharp and through Kelly and a few others who actually said, would like to explore this more. So this is what we've essentially done now. And just as a quick background, the reason this is important, because you guys all know this, you live this world as well, but when we're trying to make decisions, we have to trade off between environmental, social, economical outcomes. We're trying to find that sweet spot that keeps everyone happy. But then we've got all these different user groups. So we've got things like industry, places like Exmouth, you have all the different aspects of tourism, you've got Indigenous groups, researchers, you've got activists, you've got all these different stakeholders and all the different world views and perceptions. So trying to make everyone happy, trying to get the trust of everyone in a broad sweeping sort of engagement strategy is really hard to do. So if we can use the science from the Ningaloo Research Program to engage with the community, to have them trusting us, to have them acting, they display more pro-environmental behaviour and pro-social behaviour, that's a really big win. So the work we've just done now, which is I guess the bulk in the rest of this presentation, is essentially we looked at what impact has the Ningaloo Research Program had on the residents. I presented this in Exmouth the other day and I had lots of questions about what a resident is, so I'll clarify for you. It's not the grey nomads who spend 3 months a year there that feel like they own a plot of land. It's not someone that spends 6 months in Margaret River and then 6 months in Exmouth. These are people that live there 12 months a year, they own land there, they work there. We're talking about residents, we're talking about both communities, Exmouth and Coral Bay. So none of the tourists, a lot of the tourists wanted to do the survey, but no, it's just purely the residents. So we wanted to know what impact has the science had on them and what does it mean for the management of the region. And so essentially, The way we did this was through a quantitative survey this time. So instead of those in-depth interviews, we wanted to understand the perceptions of a broad suite of stakeholders. So we did quantitative surveys. That's all right. It's like a backbone how quick you jump up. Yeah, so we wanted a breadth of response this time opposed to depth. We wanted to capture all users, fishermen, tourist operators, people who just live there because they always have there for 4 generations. And so we did these like-it surveys, which you've probably all done at some stage in your life. So some annoying person on the street walks up to you and says, "Can you do a survey?" And you say, "Yeah," begrudgingly. And then they say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give you a statement, tell me how you feel. So down around the 1 mark means they strongly disagree. That sort of 4 to 6 is a very neutral response, and anything around 9 or 10 is a really, really strong response. But in general, anything above 6 is a positive response. So we did these like-it surveys. The way we developed the questions, which I'll show you in a minute, the statements which form the basis of these surveys, was actually through a scoping study. So I actually went into the region for a couple of weeks, and I'd go to the pub at the end of the night. This sounds so dodgy. I went to the pub at the end of the night and had a few beers with locals and just sort of started casually talking to them about these issues to understand their framing and their perceptions, and then we use that to generate the statements to put back to them in these surveys. Along the way, for every person we interviewed surveyed, we also collected their location, so whether or not they're based in Coral Bay or Exmouth, their year of birth, which we converted to generations later, gender, and highest level of education completed. And this is just to start to try and get a feel for the different demographics and how it's worked across demographics as well. Again, when people approach you in the street, and particularly if you've got a head like mine, if I walk up to people in the street, they just tell me to piss off. All the research shows that young females with accents have all the success in terms of getting people to stop and talk to them. So this is Mary and Rachel. They're 2 PhD students in my centre. Rachel, the brunette girl, is Irish and I can't understand her half the time, her accent's so thick. And Mary's Scottish. So they came into the field with me. And it was phenomenal. They would all be standing in the middle of the mall there, and people would walk up to me and I'm like, "Oh, could you do a survey?" No. And then every time they would stop for them, and it drove me nuts. So I just gave up after a while. But essentially all we did was we just spent a few weeks up in the area, in Coral Bay and Exmouth. We just positioned ourselves around town, say in the malls, at different, out the front of different shops, different attractions, at the skate park, and we just survey people. We just approach people as they were going about their day-to-day lives. We got ourselves invited, that's me playing Scrabble in the retired women's weekly Scrabble competition, and they absolutely thrashed me. They're so aggressive, and I swear they cheated. But like the girls, like Mary ended up getting invited to church. We went to church, interviewed people at church. We went out to the rec fishing club, went to the rec fishing club. So we started to get invited to different meetings and community events too, and going along and surveying people. So again, we weren't pre-selecting a group. We were just trying to get a broad spectrum of community members, the broadest that we could. And so the first thing we asked them, so these are the results, and I'm sorry there's no sexy way to present them, it's pretty boring way. Reasons for living in the region. So we wanted to understand, is the Ningaloo Marine Park actually a big part of your life, or do you live there for other reasons? So we asked them, the Ningaloo Marine Park is one of my main reasons for living here, 6.9, so it's positive. And we wanted to unpack that a bit more. So I value it because it's marine biodiversity. I value the marine park because it supports a desirable way of life, it's good for the economy, it's good for tourism, and they're all over 8, so they're all really strong reasons why people value the marine park. I think this one's important. So I feel optimistic about the future of the Ningaloo Marine Park. The 7.6 is a pretty solid positive response. So in general, residents of the area actually feel really positive about the long-term sustainability of the marine park. This one's also really interesting. So I feel proud that the Ningaloo Marine Park is World Heritage Area. 8.7 is a phenomenally positive response. So if we think back to that initial evidence from James and some of those previous people that have worked in the area, but we know the community were unhappy with the process of how the World Heritage nomination came about. But now the fact that it's there, most of them are really proud that it's World Heritage Area, and they wear that as a badge of honour. So unpacking that a little bit more, we wanted to know what they thought about the managers, and this is where it becomes risky for your department. They've actually turned out incredibly well. So a 9.1 for the top one, the conservation and sustainable management of the marine park is important to me. 9.1 is a phenomenally strong response for a like-it survey of how many people we surveyed for this. So the management's really important to them. I feel confident that the Ningaloo Marine Park is well managed, 7.3, again really strong, but it's next to. I have a strong understanding of the current rules and regulations, and I support the current rules and regulations. So in terms of, there might be this history of problems in terms of how it all came about, but in terms of the way the residents feel now, in terms of how they feel it's benefiting their community and their tourism industry and everything else, it's really positive and they're really supportive of what the department's doing up there. They also feel like they have fair access. So we did have the old grumpy bugger that's like 50 years ago, I could just go fish and catch what I want when I want, but I can't do it now, blah, blah, blah. That bloody calm agency. But that was few and far between. We didn't have so many of them anymore. For the most part, people felt they had really fair access to do all the activities they wanted to do. And we actually collected that data. We asked them how often do you use the marine park, what for. So one of the things the ex-mouth office want me to do is actually chop the data up according to those sort of factors as well, so they can see. I would like more opportunities to provide input into the management. They also, community members want to start getting more engaged, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So the next thing we did was wanted to look at how they perceive science in the region. So we said to them that scientific research is important for the management of the marine park. 9.2, again, that's a phenomenal response. When we've done surveys like this on the Great Barrier Reef or in other locations, it never comes through that strong. So you've got communities and residents up there in the region that really value science. This one's really interesting. So I believe that the government should invest in scientific research that helps inform the management of the marine park. Again, in other places like the Great Barrier Reef, all you hear is, no, we want better hospital, better road, better education. We got some of that commentary, but for the most part, people really value the fact that there's $36 million boost of research went into the region, and they really saw it as positive that your department led that initiative and brought everyone together. And they've also actively noticed how it's grown in the region over time. So that last response to how it's developed and how it's changed in the region, and how the Ningaloo Research Program has now led to so even though the program's finished, it's led to this ongoing effort in the region that scientists are hanging around doing more and more stuff. But this is one of the big ones. So as a reminder, back when it was World Heritage Nomination Days, the community, all the evidence suggested the community didn't trust the department whatsoever. And we're starting to see a reversal in these patterns. So the top one is scientific research undertaken in the marine park has led to greater trust among local communities and marine park managers. 6.7, it's a positive response. It's not 7, but it's positive. You look at the old data on it, it's definitely heading in the right direction. The interesting thing about that is the modal response, the most common response we had was actually 10. So there's a big fraction of the community that feel this really strongly. I trust the marine park managers to make better decisions because of the science. Whether or not you're using the science in decisions, the community's just happy to know it's there and can feel that you've got access to it as you need it. And so that's increasing trust between the residents and the department. These next two are interesting too. So not only do they perceive that you're making more trustworthy decisions because of the science, but they perceive that it's leading to better environmental outcomes, and they perceive that it's leading to better social outcomes in the region, leading to a better quality of life for them. And then this one's a huge one. So I trust the marine park managers to use the scientific information responsibly and ethically, not to impose a political agenda. We've asked this similar questions elsewhere, and everyone always just thinks that departments cherry pick their science to make decisions. Whether or not, however it plays out, the fact that the communities are trusting you and they don't think you're imposing a political agenda is a really strong indication that science has had a positive influence in the region, particularly given what happened 10, 15 years ago around the World Heritage nomination. And I don't want to bore you with too many graphs, but we actually looked at all dimensions of social capital. So social capital is just a concept around how different fractions of the community work together for a basic common goal. So it might be the sustainable management of the marine park. And there's 4 elements. There's a trust, collective action, which is the working together, cohesion, how well people are getting along, and information and communication, so how you're sharing knowledge and engaging with each other. Across all 4 dimensions of social capital, all our results basically send positive signals. So in the community, residents are really happy with how the department's operating, and they feel that science has had a really positive impact in the region. This is a lot, so we're going to come back to this one in a minute, because I actually don't see that as a negative. I see that as where the big opportunity is now. So, in summary, Ningaloo residents are happy. We found that they are happy with how the marine park's being managed, and they're supportive of the existing rules and regulations. We found that they believe that science is critical for managing the marine park, and they're supportive of government investment into the region. And they're also, the increased effort and improved trust among residents has really changed the relationship up there in the community, and it's leading to better social and environmental outcomes. But as I said, the lowest one's around that information and communication. So though it's positive, the way I perceive that is there's opportunities for more impact. So what we actually asked them was some questions around how they would like information. Would they like more information? So I would like more opportunities to provide input into management, 7. I would like the marine park managers to establish community-based research programs, 7.1. All of these results tell the same thing, that the community want more avenues to engage, and the fact that they actively want to be engaged is a really positive sign, because the more actively they want to be engaged in something, the better the relationship between the two groups. And also this one, I'd like the marine park managers to communicate the results of the scientific research more effectively. As we said before, as you guys will know, communities are made up, like this room's made up of people with all different worldviews. To resonate to one group doesn't necessarily resonate to another group. So finding ways to communicate across broad spectrums of communities is a challenge. And this is what we've started to try to do here. So, as I said, no one size fits all approach to communication. It never will and it never has. I always use the example of my dad, because he's a massive climate change denialist. And I've done a lot of work on climate change. And so the way someone talks to me about climate change versus my dad's very different. For him, it's around, because he's grown up on farms, it's around changing crops and just change happening slowly and what it's meant for him practically on the ground. For me, I respond very well to the term climate change, and I'll be very receptive to it. We didn't have the opportunity, I guess, the resources to go to in-depth interviews with everyone to fully understand how to engage. But using our demographic information, we've started to develop a typology of residents, which I'll talk you through now. Sorry, wrong way. So we looked at the differences between the way the genders perceive this, how the different age groups perceive these things. As I said before, we looked at level of education, so whether or not they completed Year 10, Year 12, a TAFE or equivalent degree, a university degree or a higher education degree, so a master's or PhD, and also how long they've lived in the region. And the way we did this is essentially, we wanted to develop by typology. So we tried, and basically on some feedback from Kelly and Sean, we tried chopping this up in different ways. And the only way we could get something meaningful out of data was to create some groups and some categories around ages, for example. That's why instead of using a specific age, we did it to generation. But we tried to develop a typology around 2 key axes, which is confidence in the management, but the level of engagement in management. And then we used a multi-nominal logit analysis, which is just a really fancy way of saying it's a quantitative way to explore among the demographics to see if we can attribute characteristics to a type of person. So it might not make sense, but hopefully it does. What we found is there's 3 types of, generally across the Ningaloo coast, there's 3 different types of community member. So the first is what we're called engaged optimists. They're the most common. So 62 out of our 137 people we surveyed fit into this category. These guys are really highly confident in the way you're managing a marine park. They feel like they have really strong engagement and having the opportunity to have their say in the management of the marine park. These guys really strongly value science, and they're really common in Coral Bay. And talking to the people in Exmouth 2 days ago, they really feel it's because A, the community is so small, so they talk a lot more, they're a lot more interactive, but B, because Coral Bay is so focused around the marine environment, whereas Exmouth has other things going for it. So there's a few external drives around this, but for the most part, Coral Bay residents are all really happy. Also, the engaged optimists, they tended to be female, they tended to be younger, and less likely to have undertaken higher education. The next group we have is what we're calling leader to the leaders. So these guys are really, they have confidence in what the department's doing and they're happy with how it's all going, but they have low levels of engagement. They're just sort of putting their feedback and watching the world go by, happy with how things are tracking, but they're not actively having input. But what they do have is this really strong value for the role of science, an incredibly strong value for the role of science opposed to management. And so there's opportunities, which we'll come to in a minute, around engaging some of these guys more through that science. This is really common. So this is our second most common group, as I said, 43 people. And this is a really common group in Exmouth. And it's most commonly people who have lived in 10 years. It wasn't correlated with gender or education or anything else. And so our last group is what we're calling the disengaged pessimists. So these are the grumpy buggers that like just whinge about everything. They have low confidence in the way the marine park's been managed. They have a low level of engagement in how the marine park's been managed. They're all in Exmouth. Not saying that this is how Exmouth's characterised, but in terms of our topology, they all fell out of Exmouth. And they're typified by baby boomers aged 54. And if you actually break the data down, the older they get, the grumpier they get. And they've lived in the region for more than 10 years. So these are the people who were there when the World Heritage nomination was taking place. These are the people that 30 years ago would just go catch whatever they want, kill whatever they want, fish whatever they want, and that have experienced the most change in the region. So there's probably some explaining factors for why that demographic's fallen out. But yeah, so these are the baby boomers. But again, this is our least common group. And again, because of this, we actually have opportunity now to try and reverse, to change this. And so this is what we're trying to unpack a bit at the moment. So this is just a different way of looking at it. So here we have confidence in management. Here we have engagement in management. Here's low, the other side's are high. So what we want is more engaged documents. We want people happy and confident in your department and engaged in what your department's doing. Lead it to the leaders, high confidence, low engagement, and disengaged pessimists. And so what we want to do is we want to start trying to move everyone as close to that corner as we can. It'll lead to pro-environmental behaviour, better social outcomes and so forth. And there's a range of paths that can happen. So for the leader to the leaders, we want to bump them straight up, focus. In that group, we want to get them more engaged. For the disengaged pessimists, we have two options. The jump to engaged optimists is going to be a big jump. And, after talking to these old grumpy people, it's not going to happen. They're not going to get to that level. But I reckon you can get them to this level, to lead it to the leaders. A lot of them are keen. They're just not happy with how they're getting engaged. They don't feel like they have that appropriate avenue to have their voices heard. So, there's some strategies we need to come up with. And this is what we've started to work through now. So I said before we did a survey, when people have something to say, they'll say it even if it's just a survey. And even though the survey should take 10 minutes, some of them took an hour and a half, because people would just talk to us. And so everything that people said, we jotted down. So the next part's very anecdotal, based on just discussions with the community members, but it's heading in the direction of what the managers can do. And when we presented it to the people up in the managers the next month, it resonated quite strongly with their experience. So I feel like we're heading in the right direction. So the hardest group to work with now are the disengaged pessimists. So again, the baby boomers who've lived there for a very long time. So these guys, we need to be really careful how we frame our communications material. So they say, we see a lot of the science is about more fish in the area. They don't really care that there's more fish in the area. They care that it's leading to a better life for them, it's having better social outcomes. So it's around changing the narrative to more fish, to recreational fishers are happier. And it's a real subtle change in the narrative, but it's those type of messages that are going to resonate with this group of people more so than the straight up science. They also want direct face-to-face discussion because they want to feel like they have two-way dialogue. So they're not receptive to Twitter, to Facebook. They don't just want to read things. They want to feel like they have an avenue to not only have their say, but be heard and be responded to. So they don't want to just write a letter in and know that someone's received it. They want to be able to have that chat through. And they want it to be really targeted. They want targeted invites. So again, they acknowledge, we knew there was a meeting on a public hall, but all the young people are going to go to that, or everyone's going to go to that. We don't want to go to that. We'll just be drowned out. So they want these real sort of targeted group conversations. And some of the examples we go, like the people at church are like, every Sunday we have a cup of tea after Mass. It'd be great if someone could come down, have a cup of tea with us and just have a chat when there's a change. Some of the other groups, like the fishing group, some of the operator groups, all said, look, we want to just have chats with these guys in small forums. But one of the key things here was they didn't want it at the Depot office. They didn't want it in their office. They wanted it to be a very neutral, transparent space. They wanted to go for a coffee in town. They said, Depot invites us to their office. But then if another operator drives past and sees my car there, they're wondering, what am I doing there with Depot? It's the same. When Depot's at their business, why is Depot there? What have they done? So it's around trying to... But it's all perception, but it's around creating this safe space where both parties feel like there's no power imbalance and that everyone can have an equal say without being drowned out. This one is really interesting. The people up in Exmouth really resonated with this one. These old people, they don't want to pay their park fees. Their view is it's their land, they already protect it, they sustain it, it's their backyard. And they have this really strong custodianship, this really strong ownership over the land up there. And even though they acknowledge their reduced resident fees peanuts, they don't want to pay it. To the point that they're like, if they hit it in my rates and I didn't know it was there, I'd be fine with that. Or why can't they just whack 50 cents on extra for each tourist and pay it that way? But they felt really strongly. So in terms of a really easy win for the department up there, with this group, scrapping park fees or hiding them in another mechanism is a really positive win. A really easy sort of mechanism of something practically that they can do. Well, I was having a chat with Arvin, the district manager, about it, and as he pointed out, it's not just easy to convert something like this into rates, because the bureaucracy and the different departments and everything else. But what we can start to do then is start making sure we communicate to the community. For your $100 or whatever it is you pay a year, this is exactly what it's been spent on. This is how things have improved in the past. This is how we're still improving things. Your contribution has helped in this much. It's like when you see an ad for helping a homeless kid. It's like, every 5 cents is a glass of water. It's that sort of thing. So equating it to something practical that they can see for their investment. The other group is the leave it to the leaders. So again, they're confident in the department up there, but they're not engaged. But they're really like I said, they really strongly value science. And what this group often anecdotally spoke about was they want to do more science, and they want more citizen science programs. So the big thing here is they feel that all the citizen science done in the region is actually done by tourists, which is actually wrong. So the Big Turtle program up there, I think it's around 40 people. I think 28 locals roughly, and then each year they bring 12 international, like they actually recruit international people to help in the program each year. But the general public's perceiving these 12 international people as backpackers. So the fact that they're actually recruited and they're selected for a reason and not backpackers, the perception's wrong, but that's the perception the community has. So it's around, again, changing the frame, how they communicate some of these things out, but also developing complementary citizen science projects that anyone can participate in. And so one of the examples that a few people spoke about, they're like, we want more opportunity for our children. And so one of the examples that came out quite strongly was, we have this big cohort of year 11 and 12 kids. Once a month, let's put them on a bus, take them to Turquoise Bay, take them snorkeling, and let them collect data on bleaching or disease. Just something, because A, it educates them, B, it gets them involved in the environment and out of the classroom, and C, then they'll tell their parents will tell their grandmothers, they'll tell their aunts and uncles, and you start getting this message spreading through the social network of how the department's engaging with children in the region and college kids and giving them an opportunity to develop new skills and career pathways, blah, blah, blah. So that was one example of something that the department could set up relatively cheaply that would have a lot of impact to engage these type of residents. The other thing about these guys is they want more active attempts to share the outcomes of research programs through social media, but particularly Twitter and Instagram. So Instagram, for those that don't know, because it's come up a few times last day, it's a very visual media. It lends itself really well to Ningaloo because Ningaloo is beautiful and every photo looks nice. And it's very similar. So you post a picture and you can put words underneath. So for example, you could post a picture of a whale shark with the caption, "Whale sharks are back in town. Remember the rules and regulations about boating around whale sharks." So a way to reinforce some of the key messages. The big thing here though around these Twitter accounts, so they acknowledge that the department has a Twitter account, they acknowledge that the department has a Facebook account, but I hate to say it, but the way the residents view Perth and the department is very different to how they view on-ground managers. So what they want is a district-specific channel that they can tune into. So they want a Deepore Ningaloo account, they want a Deepore Twitter account. They want it all to be district-specific. So even the Facebook at the moment, I think it's regional, it's Pilbara. I think it's regional, yeah, I was nodding. And so they want it all to be district-specific. So part of the rhetoric discourse that we got was they don't engage is because, that's the rest of Deepore. We want something specific for us. So again, a way to start engaging more directly with this fraction of the community is to set up some district-specific accounts and really tailor what you're feeding to them and that narrative to what directly resonates with them. The engaged optimists are already happy. You don't need to do much with them. You just can't forget about them. But anything that you do for the disengaged pessimists or for the leave it to the leaders will reinforce what's ever happening there. So anything more you do will keep reinforcing that behaviour. So that's pretty much it. So I guess the gist of my story today, which is one of the reasons I actually left government was because I became really jaded with the way science was used and the way we valued science as an agency. And I never felt like, I'm a big greenie at heart, like I'd chain myself to a whale if I had to. And I became really jaded with the way my department, the federal department, was operating. And I never felt like we had wins. And what I kind of feel like all this says for your department is that over the last 10 years, you've had a number of big wins. And you might not see them all along the path and they might only be incremental, but over time they add up to really big wins. And I think for you guys, it's around the new knowledge you have now to support management. I think it's around the positive impacts in tourism in the region. But I think the big one's still around how it's led to increased trust and cohesion and collective action in the region, and how the residents are feeling that that's having these really pro-environmental and pro-social outcomes, like really tangible stuff on the ground that's making them really happy with your department and what's happening. And I guess for me now, the big key take-home message is that they all want to be more engaged. Most of them, 90% of them want to be more engaged. They want to be more active in this space with management, with science, with helping you guys, with having their voices heard. And around the Humpback Whale program, like all this new stuff that's happening in the region, there's all this new opportunity. And it all relates to the way we're sharing information, we're engaging with people. So we've started to identify some practical strategies that the department and the on-ground managers up there, the council, can start doing to start this. And with a bit of concerted effort, I think you're going to see those trends keep growing, that the residents feel really engaged within the department and really trusting of the department. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Chris?
Go.
Yeah, awesome talk, mate. A couple of things that I'm sure you're already aware of, the pastoralist situation.
Which I'm pastoralist. Yeah.
Pastoralist, yeah. So I'm assuming it's obviously very, very difficult to engage with them unless you actually drive all the way out there and find the situation. I think that would be another demographic altogether where they fit in that whole spectrum in terms of disengaged pessimists and stuff like that.
So we did.
Well, you did get them in there. Okay.
Kind of. So differently. So they didn't do the survey, but we did go out and talk to them. There were, I guess, some sensitivities at the time around some issues in the region, and we were very conscious not to push our luck and make things harder for the department. So we did capture a lot of the anecdotal feelings around that. And yeah, you spot on, most of them would fit straight into that disengaged pessimist. We just to try and not strain relations further, we were very gentle with that. So we did catch up with a few of them. Yeah.
The other side is the citizen science thing. It's something that's getting a lot of airplay at the moment. Ningaloo is an interesting one for that because there are citizen science projects that are active up there, and it's funny when you see that and they're saying, well, we feel disengaged and we're offended by the fact that there's people, from outside of town coming in. The two big ones that operate up there, Reef Life Survey and Reef Check, have really struggled to get local input into their programs. They're both active in that region, but to get the commitment that they need to actually run those citizen science projects, they can't get it locally. So as a result, they source people from down here to actually do it. Because it's funny that they're saying, well, we want to be more involved. Well, the opportunities are there for them to be involved, but they're not getting involved.
I'm really glad you brought this up. So again, I presented this next mouth before coming here because for me to sit in Hobart and tell people the next mouth how their lives works is, I'm not in a position to judge somebody else's life. So that's the reason I went up to Exmouth this week, to try and get some feedback. And we actually discussed those types of examples, and specifically Reef Life Survey, post Reef Check. Part of the issue there is, again, it's this district thing. They've got a very strong sense of place, a very strong attachment to their sense of place. They say Reef Life Survey is Reef Check, there's East Coast issues, there's East Coast programs, they're not local initiatives. Particularly Reef Life Survey, they see it just as a purely academic exercise. Maybe that's because, Edgar's and Stuart Smiths get all these great science and nature publications out of there every few years. Whatever the reason, they perceive it as a purely academic thing, not a citizen science thing, and they see it as an East Coast thing. They don't have ownership over it. So that actually came up a fair bit when we spoke about it, because because we were talking to them, when they spoke about citizen science, we asked them, what about the turtle program? And that's when they all said, it's tourists doing it. We asked them about Reef Life Survey, and it's just that they want that district, they want that ownership, they want to confirm that sense of place that they have. So
again, it's a
tough one.
It is. Something like Reef Life Survey, the person strongly to get a program that's both community based, but the outcomes that come out that are also very relevant to marine management. Part of the problem with a lot of citizen science projects is, yes, you do get people engaged, and there is some value out of the information that's collected.
Yeah.
To me, the biggest value is getting those people on the water. But if we're investing in citizen science projects, we're often doing that at the detriment of those projects, because they're actually telling us the information we really need. So, really, by investing in one, we're taking away from the other.
Sure. And so one, and it didn't come up directly in relation to this, but some of the discussion around this, which take with a grain of salt because it wasn't a really strong result. Again, it's very anecdotal. But part of it was around the badging, so people very much saw Reef Life Survey again as a East Coast thing, and so what they sort of identified was very much CCG, so Cape Conservation Group, and so maybe it's around the way, again it's around getting that narrative and that frame right. So maybe, because I know CCG and Susie there has supported Reef, or one of them she brought into town, Reef Check, so maybe it's around, I guess, the way it's badged and sold to the community. So it's not sold as the national program of Reef Check. it's a CCG initiative, just happens to be building on reef tech. Do you know what I mean? So it's just some of that, again, it's very anecdotal, but I think it's just around some of that narrative. But yeah, you're spot on, it takes away money from elsewhere. And the perception's wrong, like I said, around the turtle program, these 12 people are actually internationally recruited. They're not backpackers who just roll into town and looking for something to do. But that's the perception. So again, it's just about targeting some of that education material that's going out, some of the stuff in the Milurine Discovery Centre, the new building they're building, just about making sure that narrative, that right narrative's expressed there. I don't actually think the department's doing anything wrong, it's just making sure it's clear what they're doing and the choices they're making. This guy.
Chris, excuse me if this was a subject of one of your previous talks, but given the high transient population, all the tourists, have you done similar things with all the tourists?
Kelly can answer that one.
No, that was raised as a potential to do in this project in the department because we have a Parks and Visitors service. They said that they would rather do that in-house, that element of it, so it wasn't included with Chris's.
Because I mean, I get the idea. For me, the residents would be the one that have, yes, they have vested interest in preserving, conserving it, which is essentially their income. But a lot of the transients are the ones that go there and pillage and don't necessarily have that same conservation ethic. So I'm just wondering what the attitude would be.
I would love to do that. As I said, if that ended up being the departmental decision at the time, and I fully understand the reason. So that was actually built into this project. It was a larger project that included residents, tourists, and there was another group, I can't remember now. I think we separated operators out or something. But yeah, for reasons at the time, that was taken into the department, which that's fine. I guess my feeling is, yeah, is spot on, particularly the grey nomads. Like, you know, when we approach them like you're a resident, they're like, yep. You see them driving off with the caravan, like you're not a resident. And so you're spot on. These grey nomads in particular have this really strong sense of ownership over the place, and they feel it's theirs to do with what they want. And like they talk about how, like, oh yeah, we come and we plant tomato trees. You know, you get all these anecdotes. So I think that would be a really interesting angle to explore.
The ageing baby boomers can't we just wait for another 10, 15 years? And we won't even worry about engaging them.
But that's spot on. That's a part of the thinking when people spoke about schools. Like, I think what you'll see in the region, again, this is a single snapshot in time, we need to acknowledge that, our data. But I think it's spot on, if we can engage these school kids and these college kids well now, as soon as all those baby boomers leave, we'll see this big shift, and I think it'll change even more.
But I mean, you're seeing that anyway, aren't you? You're seeing the generational shift.
Yeah.
You know, they're more younger ones, more conservation minded.
Exactly. And that came
through. They're the old ones, you know.
But I think you nailed on the head because you said that they've been there for 30 years, they used to be able to do everything, and it's almost like they're the ones that have experienced the shift, whereas the kids never were able to do anything. So
and they still call you calm. Like people, all that older generation still call you calm. That was about 4 names ago, I think.
The signage is slow.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment, is that the turtle program that you're talking about now, which has been run another way, is a substitute for the one that I set up with engagement of local tour operators, people from the US Navy who were there, and community people, which was a capture mark recapture population study, which has been collapsed. And it was collapsed by managerial over-dominance within this department in the first place, which also fractured a lot of the relationships of people on that coast, which we're trying to come back from now. But if you're going to engage people from a local community to do engagement work, what you've got to realise is that they're living there, they may have children and other things, so you tailor their commitment and engagement to what's possible in a way that they fit in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we did it, apart from the conservation of sea turtles and understanding the populations there, is one of the roles of having marine parks and things is to engage the people in the experience of nature itself and to understand things. Coral Bay is a bit different because there was hardly anybody down there, but they were all people that knew the coast. As I say, this is personal experience. People go to Kimberley, when I went up there, I went up with the express purpose to engage the saltwater coastal Aboriginal people in resource management. And I had to back it up the department, which at that time big, if you like, fraction of destruction put in this by institution and lots of managerial dominance structures in this department.
Yeah, look, that wasn't.
This happens everywhere.
Yeah, look, that wasn't within the scope of this study. So ours is very much around how the residents currently perceive things. So we didn't delve into history of those things. So again, we acknowledge that around the World Heritage and around different things, there's been these things that have happened in the past. Very much within the scope of this, the institutional side of things. So the only finding we really had that I guess is relevant was that the community very much sees DPOR in the district and DPOR in Perth as two separate DPORs. So for me, that's the only kind of message that came out of there, and that has implications for how we badge and communicate to the district, opposed to broader West Australians. Scott?
Yeah, I know this is completely outside of the scope of the study, but I guess I'm just, the value if you'd done this similar thing, say in Perth more, which is distant to people also have values, like the Great Barrier Reef, you might never have been there, polar bears, whatever. I guess I'm sort of looking at how the science might have got out of the region and got to other places, and I'm guessing looking at other projects as well, in the state. But if you, can you do this sort of stuff outside of the region to gauge that impact more broadly, how science, management, World Heritage values are impacting on, say, Perth-based people?
Definitely. So I use the Great Barrier Reef as an example. So GBR, a good colleague of mine that I've worked with a fair bit up there, they've been doing resident perceptions of the GBR and everything else, climate change, tourism, a range of factors. Science is built into that. Not as strong as in our study, but it's been a factor. And we actually used, because I know her so well, we used a bunch of her questions in our survey. So later down the track, if we want to do an East Coast, West Coast comparison of these issues, we can. But they wanted to know that, so they actually ended up doing a national survey. So again, those people that call up and like, will you do a quick 5-minute survey on the phone? There's a range of those sort of mechanisms where you pay X amount of money and they'll do the surveys for you on the national level. You just tell them how many you want from each postcode or state or thing. So you can tailor it to WA or a suburb in WA or Australia, wherever. And so they haven't published it yet, but I've seen the data and I've seen the maps, and you start to get a feel for how the messages are getting spread, how people are receiving the messages, or whether it's a newspaper or a website. And so they're starting to build a picture of how they make sure that their investment in the GBR has had impact all around Australia. So there's definitely mechanisms for that. And they're quite cost effective. Like, it's just a matter of paying the person to do it and then get a really big data set. So definitely an option. Lina, next.
Two comments. I'm intrigued that you use World Heritage Site, not Marine Park. Is there a specific reason for that? Did you want to make it bigger because...
Whereabouts?
No, but you just talked about World Heritage Site because there were two different issues. The Marine Park was, 2004, was a lot of noise, a lot of trouble. And I think by the time the World Heritage Site came through, everyone was worn out.
So, I assume you're talking about this one?
Yeah, I mean, you've been saying World Heritage Site for everything now, as you give it to, so I'm just confused as to whether you've been including terrestrial stuff.
No. So when I was in Exmouth, I spent an afternoon working with them around World Heritage Site engagement, so it's probably just fresh in my head. No, so this is purely around the Marine Park. The only specific World Heritage question was this one. So everything I've just said is the Marine Park, not the World Heritage Site. They did talk about the outstanding universal values, so the anecdotal evidence we got back to us was around some of these values and things, but our questions relate specifically to the Marine Park.
And the other question is about the work that Joanna Tom did for her PhD, looking at sense of place among the tourists and the locals.
Yeah.
I presume you're aware of that.
No. No.
The old PhD explained this.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
Ningaloo.
So when we started the first Ningaloo project, like Kelly sent me like millions of papers. Done our best to sift through a lot of them, like all the Joneses stuff and all that, a lot of your stuff. But no, I'm sure we've missed stuff on the way. It's like Kelly's PhD, not you, Kelly.
Chapman.
Thank you, Chapman. And there was a bunch of unpublished stuff which we were trying to sift through. So I might have read it, but lost
Yeah, it's
it.
just that a lot of those questions that people have been asking here were actually addressed there, and they
Yeah.
those papers. So.
I'll be glad if you could send it to
Yeah.
me.
Well,
Yeah. Because we haven't, so I should point out, we haven't written this up yet because we've got the paper and everything ready to go, 90%, but we're really keen to get feedback from the managers on the ground in Exmouth and also you guys, because again, me sitting in Hobart saying how the world works on this coast is wrong. We really wanted that help in interpreting this data practically. And so there's still opportunity very much for us to
I
incorporate
really think you
this
should put in the 5 pastoral lessons. And even if it's totally aberrant, it'll prove the point.
Yeah.
Because they always say they don't get asked. And every time you leave them out.
Oh no, they don't respond. We asked for lots of stuff
No,
like
just take
they
them to
never
a
respond.
cake and you go drive there and visit them. So it works perfectly every time.
Again, Mary and Rachel, they got the response, not me. Yeah.
When you split up like the different groups in terms of community groups and stuff like that, did you also look at like membership of particular organisations like Redfish West?
Yeah, so we've recorded all of that. We've recorded how often people access the park, what they're doing in the park and how frequently, which groups they're members of. When you cut up the data, nothing statistical falls out of it, so there's not enough representation to get a meaningful statistical analysis, which is, for all scientific purposes, means nothing, but the anecdotal stuff, again, that's good. So some of the stuff Arvid and Pete Barnes up at Exmouth actually asked me to do was cut up the data in these different ways. So they didn't care that it wasn't statistical, they just wanted to see it. So that's something that I'll do now when I get back to Hobart to present back to the department. And so some of the reports we send you guys, once this is done, might have more of that stuff in it.
Yeah, another quick question. Did you get a disparity in responses depending on who was asking? You or your colleagues?
I don't know, they're probably more positive for my colleagues than me. No, literally no. So unless they were like an 80-year-old lady, they wouldn't let me survey them. Everyone else would just go, like, I'd literally stand there and like got people come up, I'd be like, they'd say no to me, and Mary would be where Kelly's, and they would all stop. It drove me nuts. And what annoyed me, right, was a few times she had 2 people on the go at once, and I was standing here with nobody.
So I mean, like, were they more open to discussing issues they weren't happy about with your colleagues and opposed to you? You're big bloke, and they're probably scared to say that they didn't like something.
Gentle giant. Tom's one you've got to be scared of. We can pop it in the back.
Did they know where you were from?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So that's a really good point. So we identify ourselves as Utahs. So there's a bit of a perception that WA universities are bought by your department, by this department, and that we own them and they're in the back pocket. And so, you know, the fact that we're from Utahs and perceived as independent really worked well for us. So we all were wearing Utah shirts, we all had our Utahs lanyards. So everything we had with Utahs, we purely identified ourselves as Utahs. In the participant information sheet, we made very clear that the department's paid us, but it's our ownership of the data, it's our project, nothing's identifiable back to the department. We're not going to say, you know, because we interviewed people that led different community groups, we're not going to report any individual response back to the department. And again, because we've been operating in the area now for a few years, we've built really good relationships with different groups, and so people would say, you know, you can trust this person. People tended to talk quite openly. There's no way to measure exactly what you're asking, but I felt people spoke quite openly. And like I said, for a 10-minute survey, we had people that took an hour and a half, because you'll just sit there in the middle of the shopping centre and people just chat to you, and we recorded everything that they said, like we wrote it down. I do feel like some of the comments we got were very untoward, and some were very positive. But yeah, I do feel like people felt they could be open, and again, I think it's because they feel we're independent. I really think the Utahs thing did help in that regard.
Sort of along that line, Chris, in all science there's the problem of observed bias.
Yeah.
And so in these sort of surveys, I can sort of see that it's potentially, you know, the person asking the question can either phrase it or their appearance or whatever it is to get a certain answer.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, how often is that assessed? Like, for example, if Andrew Bolt was asking all these questions, would have we got a different series of results?
Yeah, potentially. So again, you can't 100% you can't stop it, but you can mitigate it. So we did what we could. So again, we developed the statements based off discussions with community members to make sure we're using that similar phrasing. Some questions, and I've presented it all here, and they're positive, but when you actually give out the questionnaire, some are actually reversed to their negative to make sure people are thinking, because if everything's positive, then you automatically reply positive. So you do little things like that. Where we could, we actually didn't verbally ask the question and ask them to fill it out. We gave them a questionnaire and just sat beside them so that if they had a question, you know, some of the statements might be a bit ambiguous. Like people might say, oh, well, heritage area, I know it's there, but what are the boundaries? Or what are the boundaries of the marine park? Does that include Bundeegi? So we're always with them to answer their questions, but where there are a few people, for example, who couldn't read or who were too old to fill out the form themselves, so we obviously have to facilitate them. So we tried things like that to try and mitigate against that. But yeah, you're spot on. You can never completely reduce it. Yeah, the nature of the beast, unfortunately. I think that's where interviews work well with qualitative stuff, because you have that chance to get more in depth. and they get more of that rant. They can have their rant and you capture that. But just the practicalities of doing in-depth interviews with 130 community members, like there just wasn't the money or the resources or the inclination. Like it's a lot of work. Yeah. Al?
Just a bit of a comment about the genesis of the Ningaloo Research Program, which, as Liz mentioned, was tied up in the 2005 rezoning, and that was also a state election, and Ningaloo was a huge issue, the rezoning of the park. And one of the reasons the program was actually put up as an idea was criticism coming from the locals and the community in Perth that decisions were being made without enough science. So it was a lack of science was making people angry about government decision making. So you can say that it's fulfilled its function pretty well, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, and I guess that's an thing. Like again, we're doing this very much as a collaboration with the departments. Like Kelly and Peter co-authors and all the outputs, and I guess this is the context. And again, me being the next method, we're going to try and capture in the reports now that there's stuff that's not necessarily written down, but did lead to it all. Yes, hello. How you going?
Really interesting study. Thanks very much for your presentation. I guess you've mentioned that the perspectives now are far more positive than they used to be. I was just wondering whether there are any historical data that would put a metric on that for any of the individual questions.
So there's data. There's not data that's been collected in the same way with the same questions. So there's not the opportunity to make a direct comparison. Just generally make comments about their general findings and our general findings over time. No, and so that again, and that's why I caveat this by saying this is a snapshot in time. There's a bit of conflict at the moment around the new swimming with humpback industry up there. And so, if you did this in 12 months, would you get the same results, or would that diminish this trust? Is there opportunities? This changes over time, and we're talking to Arvid up there, the district manager, and how regularly should we redo these things to sort of track progress and track change? And but again, some of this stuff gives insights into now how we can manage some of this conflict around the humpback program, and I had a good chat to them about that when I was there, and we implemented some of the stuff. We helped them devise it in Australia. So stuff like this, I think, feeds into that. But we should be doing it. Like if this was useful to the department, it should be done, more regularly. Whether that's every year or every 5 years, it depends what the department needs.
Yeah, I mean, you may find things like your one group, you've said a particular age. You may actually find that they don't disappear. In time. they may recruit from a group that
those
is
great nomads.
That's the sort of thing that might be really quite interesting and help target your communication.
Oh, of course. Again, this presents a very sort of unidirectional view of a community, which is obviously complex and changes all the time. Fully acknowledge the limitations.
And I guess also you focused on science, but you may find that a change of staff up there, you might have a less positive.
So that came out anecdotally, and so people like Pete and Arthur who've been up there for a while, I think Arthur's on 10 years, Pete's around 7 or something, people really resonated with, operators in particular really liked talking to them because they felt like they had that relationship. Where some of the new people coming in that are trying to get out on boats, they didn't feel like they had that rapport. So stuff like that came through, again, anecdotally, not directly through our questions. Tom?
Last question.
Tapping into your social science mind, realistically speaking, how confident are you that you can shift the opinions of the disengaged optimists?
Pessimists, really optimistic. Yeah. So, and again, I actually think it's really easy. And I was talking to Kelly about this before. So, for example, some of the things are as simple as, a lot of it's around that narrative and the framing. We've seen this have success. What's neat about the Ningaloo community is it's two relatively small communities, and that's where you always have the most success with this type of activity. If you're going to say, I'm going to change Perth's perception, you'd never do it. It's a huge community. But up there, you've got these nice tight bounds, and you've got these really tight social networks and community groups that you can capitalise on. So I've seen it happen in places like Nowra, which are comparable, different but comparable. And so it's around getting that narrative right and that discourse and that framing. And so, even just having someone up there that's across that narrative and checking all communications material before it's released to make sure that narrative's correct, that would make a huge difference. Because the information they want, for example, the disengaged pessimists, a fishing study, again, they don't want to know there's more fish, they just want to know they're catching more fish. It's probably in that same study, but it's just that frame, that lens that has been put to them, that their brain, it's not resonating with their brain. Again, it's like, you say climate change to my dad, he ignores it. You say it to me, I listen. So it's just getting that right. So we've seen it happen. We've done some work, like I said, in that narrow region. It's actually, I don't want to say easy, it's achievable, and it takes some money and resource, but I guess the bigger thing is it takes some commitment. So you talk in a district office like that where everyone's already stretched and they're very responsive to like, oh, Irukandji's back, or, you know, there's this conflict now about humpbacks, or, you know, whatever they're being responsive to. Capacity is always the issue, and doing this stuff effectively involves commitment and capacity over time.
I mean, I see what you're saying. You know, I think there's got to be very careful with the, I guess, what these people are actually looking for. And I think they used an example there, for example, so they don't want to know if sanctuary zones are working, they want to know that they're catching more fish. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you're never going to show that.
Yeah.
That's just not what sanctuary zones are for. And so if that's what they're wanting to see, well, that's a big issue.
No, it's not the data, it's the framing. So, you know, maybe it's a frame like sanctuary zones are working, or there's more fish for you to catch. So it's just that subtle language stuff. Does that make sense? So it's not that they want data.
Again, scientifically, we're not going to show that. We can't show that.
So
it is, I'm sorry, but it is, that's not what a sanctuary zone is designed for. Just think about it as an example. If that's what these people are expecting,
yeah.
then
That's because you're a real scientist and I do this social science stuff.
Sometimes sanctuary zones can be implemented to increase recruits to other areas, like
yeah, but you're going to see, if you were to look at it relative, that if there were no sanctuary zones, yeah, they're catching more fish. But scientifically, if you're doing a monitoring program under an area where there's sustained fishing pressure, I'm sorry, you're not going to show that the number of fish that people are trying to catch will increase.
No, but like for example, the recruitment one, like I think Gary stuff and it's Dave stuff up in the GBR. Like there's messages out of that you can, I don't want to say panic, it's not panic, that you can tailor, and it's just getting that frame right. So there's evidence there that they would relate to. And again, I'm using very quick examples for the sake of putting it talking to an hour, but it's far more complex in terms of developing that narrative. But I think it's already there in the literature, the narrative that you need. And when I read through the reports coming out of the Ningaloo Research Program, there's a lot of stuff in there that will resonate with them. So it's about picking out the bits that will resonate. But I fully get what you're saying as a real scientist.
I'm conscious there's always a proportion of people in society that no matter what we do, there's going to be a problem with it. And I don't know where this sits in terms of the proportion we're looking at here in terms of the overall proportion of that. I really don't know.
So 3 people we interviewed, and it's funny because when I said this in next mouth, they're like, we should probably name them. You were never going to change their perceptions of your department. There is you could give them $1 million and they'll still hate you. And you're never going to change it, and you inevitably have that. But it's about focus. For me, I guess it's about where you can get those wins. And again, so I wouldn't pour resources into those 3 people. I'd just sort of push them off the side and focus where you're going to have the most impact. But I get what you're saying. I 100% agree. Yeah.
Can we guess who they are? I think we probably have a good chance.
I thought I was going to get killed at one. I got invited to someone's house and I just was not prepared.
Okay, well, thanks very much. This was a great presentation and really good to see so much discussion around it as well. I think there's certainly things we can be doing with this research. So thank you very much. Please join me again.